Well, here we go, guys. So we're going to talk about 5.6% of a number. And I called this part A because later on we're going to talk about finding the actual number. And I'll show you some examples there as well. So I've mentioned in my lecture part of this lesson, I've found 3 ways to be very helpful. This first way is I call the 10% rule. This is for when I can find something very quickly because it's nice and easy, okay? I know that I can find 10% of any number by just moving the decimal point over one place, and that's what I did here with 80. So I took a blue marker and I drew a little arrow from 80 over to 8. Down below where you see the 10% rule in green, that 8 is the 10% of 80. And notice since it's 20%, I want to multiply it by 2 because it's 20% is obviously twice what 10% is. I could just add 8 plus 8, 2, that would give me the same result, but 20% of 80 is 16. Pretty easy stuff. If I have something that's a little more difficult, not too terribly difficult, like 15% of 60. And this comes in handy when you get a little older and you take your date out for dinner and you decide you want to tip 15%, let's say. So notice I circled the 1 in 15% because 10% of 60, just moving the decimal point over, is 6. I drew an arrow in red down to the 6. And then I did 5%. Well, I know 10% is 6 of 60, so half of 10% of 6 would be 3. So 6 plus 3 is 9. So I would tip my food server $9 on a bill of $60 if I wanted to tip 15%. The second method I always say is real good for when you have pretty difficult stuff. Now I certainly didn't give you a difficult one when I said 25% of 40, but if I had a 38% of 79 or 12% of 82 or something like that, then I probably want to grab the calculator. We know that the word of means multiplication. So I changed my 25% into a decimal very quickly, 0.25 or 25 hundredths. I hit a multiplication sign on my calculator, I hit the 40, and bam, I get 10. So 25% of 40 is 10. Last but not least is our fraction method. I only recommend fraction method. Oh, looks like we have one other example. Sorry, I didn't realize that's part of that. So here I have 160% of 50. This is a situation where the percentage is actually greater than 1, so it's going to be a larger number than I started with. So I have 160% of 50. I move my decimal point over twice to make that 1 6/10. Of meaning multiplication. 50, 1.6 or 1 6/10 times 50 equal 80. Sorry, I thought that was part of my fraction stuff. And then down below I have a fraction example for you. Let's extend that page a little bit. Mr. Mac, Mr. Shaky Hand. Boom. All right. So 75% of 400. This is one where I can take 75% and make it into a fraction in my head very quickly. 75 100ths, and that's reduced down to 3/4. And then notice I multiplied my 3/4 by 400 over 1. I did some cross canceling here. I divided 4 and 400 both by 4. I ended up with 3 over 1 times 100 over 1. 3 times 100 is 300. 1 times 1 is 1. So 75% of 400 equal 300. So those are the 3 methods that I find best. I know kids like to jump on the calculator method, but in class tomorrow we'll practice a few where I want you to try that 10% rule and I want you to try this fraction because even though we think it, sometimes we're faster than a calculator. Or even though we think we're not, I should say. Sometimes we are. The second part of this lesson is finding the whole. So this would be part B, basically. And notice it looks very similar to what we were talking about. It's 10% of, but instead of 10% of 30, it says 10% of what number is 30. The method that the book uses looks like this. So we start with the 30, So we start with the number on the right, we kind of move it over to the left. And instead of multiplying, we're going to divide by what that percent is. So for example, 30 divided by 1/10. And over on the right, I moved the decimal point over, I made it 1, and then I added a 0 to the 30. So 10% of 300 equal 30. And then I went ahead and did it as a fraction. So I changed 30 to 30 over 1 in blue here. And then I divided by 1/10. Instead of doing it as a decimal, I did it as a fraction. 30 divided by 1/10, notice down below in red, I kept the 30 over 1. I changed it to a multiplication problem in green, and then I flipped the 1/10. 30 over 1 times 10 over 1 is 300 over 1, which equals 300. And I have some bizarre green line kind of running through there. I'm not sure what that happened, or how that happened. Down below, I did it as a visual model. So if 30 is 10% of a number on the left there, I can just keep adding 30s until I get to 100%. So I put in the 10% for 20, then another, and then I just put the 30s in up until I got to 100%, and I ended up with 300 as well. This is a way that I learned when I was in school that I really like. And if you like it, please use it. If you like the other method, that is fine as well. So I do it algebraically, and by algebraically I mean I stick a new variable in for a number. In this case I just use the letter N for number. So notice I took 40% in blue, and right below I changed it to 0.4, or 4/10. Of still means times. N is now the number that I'm trying to search, and I put a little black arrow there, so a number, and then I underlined a variable. We call that a variable, and I know you guys know that, but just a good review for you. Equals 60. Now, in algebra, what we want to do is we want to isolate that variable. So I want to get that N all by itself, and I can do that really easy. All I have to do is divide 4/10 by 4/10. Because when I divide anything by itself, whether it's a giant number, a decimal, anything like whatever, it's always going to be 1. So I did that to the 4/10, and then notice if you look to the other side of the equation, I divided 60 by 4/10 as well. And I cheated and I used a calculator, which I think you should too, and it's not really cheating, I'm just kidding. But 60 divided by 4/10 equal 150. So now down below I have 1 times N equal 150. Well, 1 times any number is going to be that number, so N is going to equal 150. This is the way that I would really prefer that you do this. If it works for you, that's great. We will be doing some examples tomorrow, and probably this will be one where we do the percent one day, and then we'll do percent of a number the next, so that we can kind of separate those out for you. Take some great notes tonight. Remember, I've been harping on it the last couple lessons, but write it all down. You're going to need it, okay? We will be talking about it tomorrow. See ya.